This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. About a year ago that I really first got a real sense for what the ES335 is like to play. Now obviously I don't have a real one, but my first experience of one was playing a Gibson Memphis ES335 that belongs to Paul. I feel like it's sort of, people do say stuff about like a Les Paul being a man's kind of, or grown-up's guitar. I feel like the ES335 is for the discerning grown-up guitarist in some ways, and so throughout last year I sort of played that Paul one, I played Ross Bailey from Yamaha, I played his Gibson ES335, and I also played a Greco Super Real and a couple of Sire H7s, and I feel like I've got a better sense for what they're about. Also I played Gary, he's got a John Lennon Casino, which is, I think, the most unique of the things that I tried. So the main difference with a Casino is that it's a full hollow body. These ES335 types actually have like a solid piece of wood running through here, and that's kind of why they're referred to as semi-hollow. The ES stands for Electric Spanish, apparently, and it's sort of, when it first came out, was the goal of Gibson to kind of build something that took the best of there. So they were building hollow body guitars, then they started building the Les Paul, and they wanted to have something that kind of combined both worlds. And what you end up with is quite a versatile guitar. There's not really much in the way of styles that you can't play on a 335 semi-hollow. You see all sorts of people have used one over the years. Obviously Larry Carlton, Robin Ford, Eric Johnson, one of my favourite players, obviously. Tons of players. Noel Gallagher played something ES335-ish. I don't know exactly what the differences are, but you got like Rivera's bits and pieces that are sort of shaped like this and are maybe a bit different. Obviously the Beatles were users of the Casino, which is shaped like this but fully hollow. What else have we got? B.B. King played an ES335 shaped thing. Lucille, obviously that's got some tweaks and stuff. But yeah, it's like one of those guitars. Tom DeLonge, the most kind of versatile thing, really, and kind of fits in anywhere. You see them in indie bands and all sorts of stuff like that. It's just, I think, quite a mature kind of instrument. The one thing I like about it over the Les Paul, which I have to say to me feels like quite a similar sounding instrument and In some ways, you know, the same sort of scale length and same sort of setup down here, the 4 and the 3-way. The main sort of difference is that your arm position I find I think more comfortable in some ways on the ES335 style. It seems to me like you've got your higher arm up here, and especially if you're then sort of playing jazz and stuff like that, I think the bigger feeling body does make a bit of a difference. And I don't know, it's more of a feeling to play a thing rather than a totally different sound. I'm not sure that there's like a totally unique signature voice to the ES335. Personally, it's not something I'd necessarily be able to pick out, although depending on the certain styles of music, it's more the sort of thing that I noticed that people are playing in some ways a little bit classier on an ES335. And is that just a me thing, or is that something that you feel as well? And in some ways I feel like, certainly when I played them with 11s on it, feels like the guitar is fighting a bit back at you, and it feels like you're having to put a bit more into each note, and in some ways that sort of slows down your playing a bit. Equally, it's got a 12-inch radius, I think, this one, which is, you know, a little bit flatter than my Strats and that sort of stuff. So in some ways, and with the shorter scale length, it does suit itself to really fast playing as well in a lot of ways. Also, I've noticed people like Charlie Allen who play really kind of funky stuff on an ES335, and you see them come up in like gospel places and all sorts of stuff. I think Isaiah Sharkey has played a 335 as well. It's just a guitar that you see all over the place, from blues to soul, from rock, indie. It's really one of those designs that doesn't particularly fit into any one category in the way that some others do. For me, I've actually gigged this one live when I was playing jazz. I moved slightly away from using, I've got the black ES165 Herb Ellis signature, but I found that the body on that, because of how thick it is, if you're playing with a drummer and stuff like that, it's really quite difficult to tame feedback with this. That's a problem you don't have so much with the semi-hollow. And also it kind of still looks in keeping in a jazz context in some ways, so it's kind of neat for that. The guitar that ends up being really quite versatile, and you can kind of use it in all the same places that you would a Les Paul, except for maybe the more extreme ends of the metal scene. But yeah, this one has a kind of pretty chunky neck, feels sort of to me like a 50s neck. I think there are particularly Epiphones and stuff that have a bit of a slimmer neck. In terms of good examples of the guitars to buy, I guess Epiphone would be a really pretty safe bet. I know for me, I really like Sire. I think people have got on nicely with Hagstrom as well. So those are like 3 options at the potentially lower end of the market, sort of £500-ish. Then beyond that, I think Eastman have a really good reputation. Tokai have a really good reputation, and Yamaha have a really good reputation. Their SA1200, I think it might be called. And then obviously you've got Gibson making them, Collings and Heritage. And Heritage used to build for Gibson, right? Builders from Gibson that started Heritage. I think that probably about sums up some of the decent options. Of course, actually, Ibanez makes some really cool hollow bodies and ES335 types. I had one. The other option I think suits me in some ways just as well, and maybe a little better. I used to have an Epiphone ES339, and that's like a slightly smaller body shape, which works for me quite nicely. I'm about 5'10"-ish. And so it kind of suits me quite nicely to have a slightly smaller body, but you get maybe a little bit more close to having neck dive issues with the ES339. But that's another really cool design that I think came a little bit later, but based on this idea. You've also got a Casino Coupe, which is the same sort of idea as a Casino, but smaller, with that smaller body type. I think those are pretty cool guitars as well. But let me know your favorite ES335 player if you've got one. And again, let me and other people know in the comments about the kind of best 335s that you can find at any price range. So if it's the cheaper end, that's really good stuff too, because not all of us are going to spend sort of £3,000 on an ES335 type guitar. I think it's quite a nice option to have, but it's not something I reach for all the time. It's kind of just one of those things where it's like, oh, maybe I'll play the ES335 today, and today was one of those days. Thank you for stopping by. I'll catch you in another video soon. I was using the Eric lead for that intro, as well as the 3580 rhythm preset, and yeah, I was feeling the vibe for that. Is there any style of music that you can't play on one of these boys? Let me know in the comments. Cheers.